You think it's gonna happen? You think we're gonna see like a high end card that's just been reprinted or just like extremely well forged?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already happened. I think there's already like big cards and first ed Zards and unlimited Zards, and I think there's a lot of things that have been sort of recreated in like ways that are very difficult to tell.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to season 2, episode 1 of the NextGen TCG podcast. I am your co-host, also moderator. Zach is also a moderator. Zach Browning. Everyone gets a ribbon here, okay? So we are finally back with the podcast. Sorry for the long hiatus. I guess it's Happy New Year as well. What's the statute of limitations for when you can stop wishing someone a Happy New Year?
You do it all year. Some people have the Christmas tree up all year. Do it all year. I mean, what are they going to say? Like, no Happy New Year? It's always a Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you, Zach, because this is actually the first time we've talked. Like, actually, we've texted, but we actually have not talked in 2024. So, Happy New Year. I hope that your holidays were good and everyone is well. So, yeah, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. You know, I told you we moved back in November, so still getting settled in here and, get to see just about everyone you can for the holidays. And I feel like, for the start of 2024, I didn't really have a travel schedule. I just kind of was planning to stay home, and that has not happened whatsoever. And I'm super curious how your New Year's going. And so, how have you been? How's your New Year going?
So, obviously, we're basically in February now. So I had a lot of life stuff happen.
Oh no!
So for like unfortunate stuff. So, my mom was actually crossing an intersection and on a bicycle, and she actually got hit by a cement truck.
What?
Everyone's fine. She's okay. But yeah. So she went across the intersection. The cement truck saw her. It broke. Luckily, it did break. Because if it didn't break, obviously with the size of the cement truck, if it didn't break, I definitely would not have a mom anymore. So we had that kind of a family thing for a couple weeks.
Okay.
So that's why I've been busy. So that happened, and then we also had a little bit of a cancer scare with our dog.
Oh no!
We have two beautiful Boston Terriers. One of them has had cancer before, a mast cell tumor that we had removed. Then we noticed this past week another lump showed up. So anytime it shows up, we kind of go into a little bit of a frenzy and kind of a very dark place, waiting for the biopsy back and making sure. So we found out that it's not cancer, so it's fine. So we have to have the lump still removed. So yeah, dealing with family stuff, pet stuff. Yeah, but my mom is good. She's healthy. Well, as healthy as she could be after getting clipped on her bicycle. Yeah. That's basically where I've been, anyways, for the last couple weeks. I don't want to start this season, episode 1, on a downturn here.
Yeah.
But that's the reason why we're so late getting the podcast, just because I've been extremely busy, just kind of keeping up with my family and making sure everyone's good and everything's okay.
Dude, I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm glad to hear your mom's okay, but how does it feel to have the toughest mom out there getting stopping a cement truck? She's probably taking care of you after getting hit, just being that strong.
Yeah,
dude.
right.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah.
When you said the cement truck broke, I thought you literally meant like it broke down or something. Or
no.
Have you ever seen the video? You ever seen the video of like a cement truck stopping and then the cement coming out? Like, I was also like worried maybe your mom got covered in cement.
No.
And so that would have been really hard to recover from. But no, I'm all jokes aside, I'm really glad she's okay. That's just scary.
Yeah, I'm glad she's fine as well. So just word to the wise out there: tell your parents that you love them. Tell them to always be just be conscious of your surroundings. It's just we're at the time of the year where things get darker really quickly, and just make sure that you look both ways, even if it's a green light or if it's a red light. Just make sure. Don't assume that people will see you and you'll live a longer life. So let's talk about market trends, and we'll always start about with the big boy, the flagship card of the hobby, and that is the PSA 10 first edition Charizard. One auctioned off at 192, which we'll get into our main topic later about worst times to sell, but because that is a very anything I think anything sub 200,
Mhm.
I would consider a low price for that card. But uh, auctioning, like putting stuff this time of year, people are a little bit more strapped for cash. Let's talk about what do you think of that price?
I mean, anytime you auction a big card, you have to understand a lot of people are going to auction like the hobby grails, the big stuff. Q3, really leading to Q4. And if you're trying to auction something big, you really want to get that sort of on the plate before Black Friday. So even a lot of stuff in December usually dwindles a little bit. It's usually tough to get top prices. And so, coming into January and you're auctioning a big card, after a few have been auctioned, it's not like it's a cold market. And so it's like, you kind of already know where things are at. That 192 just feels almost right where it should be. I mean, it was a thin stamp. It wasn't like pristine or the best copy out there. Thick, the thicks, even the bad copies. There was a thick stamp before that went for like 218, like just the auction before. So that 192 actually kind of feels right where it should be. And over the course of a year, the market goes up and down, and it's still within that range. I think for the first Zard, you kind of have that 150 to 250 range. Like you might have an outlier 250 sale if the card looks absolutely beautiful. But if a Zard sold for 150, I would probably just think it's a weak copy or maybe 4 auctioned in the same week. There's only 120, 21 or so out there. And so, like, long story short, the card's holding strong. And even for it being a tough time of the year, it kind of feels right where it should be, even though it was a little lower than the last few.
Just talking about population. So the actual population of the first edition Charizard was at 124, and it dropped to 123. I don't know the exact specifics of why the population dropped. The only thing I could probably kind of speculate on is that most likely PSA probably contacted the owner of one. My thing is that PSA probably invalidated a cert for PSA Zard, just because a lot of people use scans and pictures of cars that they find online, and basically post it on eBay or other selling sites and try to sell it as their own, but it's not actually their own. And if that happens multiple times, PSA will actually contact, if they know the owner of that card, and say, "Listen, your card has been used multiple times in scams. Just if you send it back to us, we'll give you a new cert. We'll probably recase it for you." The issue with that is you're depending on where you live, because I remember Only Collectibles, he's had one of his Charizards invalidated, and he ran into some issues just shipping it over and getting it back, trying to avoid getting dinged for customs on a card that you personally already own, and then you're literally just getting a new cert number. You're not buying, you're not selling, you're just trying to get a new card, your card back to you. So, and there's always a risk, right, when you ship a $200,000 item across the pond, because I think he lives in the United Kingdom. My guess, probably PSA reached out to someone and they said, "I don't want to send it for recertification because I don't want that inherent risk involved in that." And that's probably why the population dropped.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. And PSA is risk averse. They're also business, so they're not going to pay for everything if they don't have to. So say, yeah, sure, we'll recase that for you. We'll give you a new cert, but you got to send it on your own dime. I've heard that happen before, and I've done some stuff with PSA where I've helped them do a few things where it was their request and they paid for shipping. And when things have come back to me, it's come back like in an armored truck or something like that. So like they're going to protect themselves and de-risk, but at the same time, like they're not going to pay for things. Like there's a lot of things that have been recased, like 2000 fossil or 2000 base. I've got a full set that's not labeled, and it's like I could pay to send it in, but PSA isn't going to like do that for free, and they're not going to cover shipping even though it changed. So there's a lot of instances where PSA just acts as a business, and they're private equity, they're a private company now, so they're going to just they're not going to be as generous with covering the fees, I guess.
I guess it's that situation where, though, if you have your cert invalidated to you, it doesn't really matter if you plan
No.
to hold it forever. But the issue is if you ever plan to sell it, you can't really sell a card with an invalidated cert and expect to get maximum value for it.
Dude, I'll say, like, not to tangent here, but just going from like collector to like full time, like there's so many things that change just from like a mental mindset. Like, as a collector, I'm like, I don't care what it ships, like just as long as it gets there. I don't care if it takes a month. Like, I don't care if the cert's right or the label's right. Like it's mine. I'm not going to sell it. Like, I have no intention to whatever. But then like you get to the business side of it, and it's like, I need this ship today. I need it back. This, that, gotta do whatever. And it's like it's just a totally different mindset. So it's super interesting to like have to blend both worlds, because I really for 10 years only had like the collector sort of focus on a lot of things.
The biggest thing they try to understand is that you never want to give a reason for a person not to buy something.
Yeah.
And you saw everything that you could think of. It's kind of like grading. Anything that you can think of like it will affect the grade probably can. And anything that can affect the final price of a card probably will. So if you want that max value for that card, you probably eventually will have to get that cert validated in the most safest way possible. So yeah, it's a low. But it's not that bad considering it's an auction. And I would expect like in an okay market 215 for that card. And although like 24 $2,500 $25,000 sounds like a lot, but when you reach that upper echelon of cards, it's kind of minuscule in comparison. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on what the big boy is trending at these days. The next
Yeah.
card we want to talk about is the Ishihara GX. The famous card with one of those few cards that has a gigantic face on it. So a PSA 6 copy sold for just under 17,000, 16.8 on PWCC. And just kind of goes to show you when you get like rarity a little bit, like even with the 6th grade, I thought that was like extremely strong price for that card.
Yeah. I mean, there's not that many of them made. And so it's like, can you get them? And of the ones that were made, which ones are out in the wild? And, I always think back to the PSA 10 that sold for 100K, like right when it first came out. And that price just blew us away at how big that was. And, the market is there for it. I've heard of a few people that are looking for it. They want like that raw price, that 6 price, that lower price. And I know a few of them were surprised at this most recent sale. And it is a step down, about $3,000 less than the last 6 that sold, the SGC 6 at Heritage. But reality is, as more of them come up, you auction this time of the year, like we mentioned, it's just going to be tough to achieve those top prices. But the card is still holding well. And when you think about how much money has gone through the Pokemon market, how much high end has flowed through, it's actually surprising. At one, you said you thought this price was strong, and two, how many things just haven't plummeted. Like Illustrator obviously is the one thing that feels like it plummeted, but there's a lot of other things that are really priced pretty strong compared to considering how much like actually dollars have flown to the hobby in the last few months.
Yeah, this is actually one of those cards where the autograph would actually I'd be interested in a one where like if I was in the market, like an autograph obviously would also really help the value of this card. And like at a PSA 6th grade, obviously to get that maximum value. And do you know what like pain? I saw like an autograph one of these, and it was autographed with like a roller pen. I like, it broke my heart. I was like, dude, how do you get someone to sign a card like this with a roller ball pen, man? You gotta get a Sharpie or something.
Like,
Just
come on, man.
come on. I guess the person
Yeah.
probably wasn't expecting to sell. But yeah. Actually, with the rollerball pen, would PSA consider that like damage? Because you actually have to kind of indent that card a little bit to get that ink out of the pen.
They would. I've seen that before, especially on some other TCGs where there's been an autograph, and I've actually seen like it come through, like indent the card. Like cardboard is in a way almost malleable, like to the point you can like bend and this and that, and so like absolutely, I think that would damage the card. So I'd use a Sharpie or an ink pen if you ever want to get something. Don't use a roller ball unless you really don't care about condition. It's all about the auto, and you only have a roller ball, especially in Ishihara GX, where there's not that many copies. So that would be the ultimate collector decision. Like, yes, the auto means more than the card. Like, whoa. Like, I don't care about centering. I care about, I don't know, like going on those tangents.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So moving on, let's take it down. Let's take it down a notch and move into a more price friendly tier. And we're gonna talk about one of the biggest stories of 2023, and that is the Van Gogh Pika, which is something I had not picked up yet because I was like adamant that I was like around 250 to 300, I'd be okay with that price. And then after our conversation about the card, and you told me like you like in real life you weren't that impressed with the card because it just kind of fell flat in terms
Yeah.
of like its detail in person. So I haven't been really in a rush to pick one up. But so PSA 10 copies pretty much around that $300 mark. Raw packs around 150, and then PSA 9 also around 140, 150. So if you're opening to grade, you're pretty much hoping you have to hit a 10 at this point to make any profit. Those margins are very small, but with the amount of Van Gogh Pikas out there, I guess we talked about before, if you can sell 100,000 cards and make $5 profits on every single one of them, then that's better than just selling on that one big card all the time. So what do you think of the state of Van Gogh Pika and the overall market of it?
What's that popular pop song or rap song? It's like it's going down, it's going down, 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 down. You know which one I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking
It's like
about.
Jason Derulo or something.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
imagine.
sing, but that's the way I feel, dude. Like there's another story that came out about a lot of stores, getting packs of Van Gogh Pikas. There's a story that came out about museum employees stealing the Van Gogh Pikas, and I think 3 were fired because of it that they caught. It might have been even more. And so there's all these stories about manipulation, backdooring, this and that, and then there's the card shops. Of course, if you distribute it to a bunch of them, people aren't necessarily always going to act the right way. I mean, just with the pre-release promos and staff promos that have come out over the years, a lot of card shops will handle it the right way, this and that. Some card shops are open because they were former collectors and this and that, and they're going to keep them. And they're not always going to follow the rules, and so of course there were reports right away of some of those not getting handled properly. But the way it looks is that Pokemon is still printing these, that they are still giving these out. They are saying, we see you secondary market, we see you jacking these up, we see you guys trying to make this whatever, and we're just going to print it and print it and print it. And I actually love that because when you buy something super cheap, like a Screen Pika or a Screen promo, $25, and then over time it goes up, over time it does better, that's amazing. That's great. But like when things are manipulated from the start and everyone's gung ho about something, everyone's raving about something, I want to say like 95% of the time, it feels like it fails. It feels like it just goes down, or at some point in the next 3 years, that price is just lower. And so, again, we just go back to everything we preached in 2023. When the market is super aggressive and buy, that's probably when you should sell. And whenever the market is like sell, 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 it's probably when you should buy. It's just like, it's like we're not saying Screen Pika or the Pacho or the Picasso Pika is going to be a bad card overall. We're just saying like right now, it's maybe not the best thing to buy.
Yeah. What do you want to wager a guess what the PSA 10 population of this card is?
Man, I would say it's probably like 10,000, just given that PSA's probably got all the mail-in orders from Europe in, and all that bulk $15, $14 rates that they're going for.
You're pretty close. As of right
Ooh.
now, on January 29th, it is at 10,930. So
Oh my gosh.
just shy of 11,000. So the PSA 10 population is actually higher than the PSA 9 population. The PSA 9 population is just at 8,500. So the print quality on these were pretty solid. So yeah, any more? You think it drops any more? What's the base price of 250 at PSA 10?
I think basement price is 200. I like Storytown. I like going back to memories, and like one memory I had was one of the modern Zards, like the black like the Burning Shadow Zard, and it like having such a high pop and the price being supported. That was like one of the first true instances of like modern like holding itself at a price that really didn't make sense compared to like vintage this and that. And so like I actually have a lot more confidence in like the modern market holding a higher price. And I think years past, like all the bigger cards that say, oh, that should come down to $50 or $100, or you have 10,000 of them. Like, there's no way. But it just seems like there's so many more people in the hobby that, one, like, even if they left, like, maybe they just keep their copy instead of sell it, or, oh, I like Pika. I don't care if it's $400 or $200, because people like are just so accustomed to paying more for Pokemon cards. Where years ago, like, it was like, you're spending $20 on a Pokemon card. That's ridiculous. And now it's like, well, I mean, this other card goes for 1,000, so $100 for a Pika is not bad. So I do feel like the basement price is probably higher than I would have said maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. What about you?
I think two and a quarter. I think it's basement.
Yeah,
225.
And this is based on all the knowledge and all the information we have, which, part of the information is Pokemon continues to print these. So that's under the assumption that more of these are going to come to market. So that's under the assumption that everyone's going to grade them. It's under the assumption that, all these other things are happening. So Pokemon says, hey, we're done. It goes up.
I wasn't made aware of the Pokemon heist of this card. Again, it's one of those instances in the hobby. It's happened before multiple times. It's happened now. It'll happen again. Cards will be stolen. Any remote like thing of value, especially cardboard, which is easily you can transport it pretty easily. It's got to be taken by workers who don't really care. So
Yeah.
it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is.
I had a friend in California make an Instagram post. He said, "Is there a card shop in Cali that hasn't been broken into yet?" And I was like thinking, like, geez, like, have that many card shops been broken into? Like, I mean, you hear of them, but like, are they all in California? Like it just, crazy times, man.
All right, let's talk about something that's more in my wheelhouse, in your wheelhouse especially. So WotC prices. So beautiful card, PSA 10 copy of Aquapus Lugia, finishing off at 11,000. We talked about it in the podcast that we didn't record or didn't post. We recorded but didn't post. We had someone auction off the PSA 10 Neo Genesis Lugia, that finishing off at 22,000. So I like the price. I like the price of the Aquapus Lugia. That is one of the most beautiful cards in the entire hobby. In my personal opinion, the artwork itself is way better than the Neo Genesis one, because it feels like it's kind of like it's doing like the Pokemon movie thing where it's like going through the water. Beautiful hollow on that card. Neo Genesis one is kind of weird. It has like awkward dimensions. Its hands are really strange. But the Neo Genesis, what a ride! What a ride it's been with the Neo Genesis Lugia, man. We went from over six figures to auctioning off at 22,000. I don't think anyone in the hobby, like anyone deeply entrenched in the hobby, for a second thought that six-figure price on a Lugia was sustainable at any point. I know, like shortly after that PSA 10 was auctioned, a BGS 10 was auctioned like the following month, which kind of slightly kicked up the price point. Felt like almost like someone was just trying to maintain that price a little bit. But ever since then, like really steady decline on the Neo Genesis price. So let's start with the Aquapus one. What were your thoughts on the $11,000 price tag for that card?
I mean, I think it feels pretty strong. Like you said, it's one of the more beautiful card arts. One other thing that really threw me off is, or I was surprised with, is the Define card had made a post of the market cap of that card being like $3.5 million, which makes you think like, geez, like 3.5 for like a card in a set that's like set like 15 or 14 or something, and it's like a secret rare. Like, yeah, it's a Lugia, yeah, it's the best card in the set, but it's always been a nice card. I've sold 9s for several thousand. The 10s have always done pretty well, but 11s, like, it's still going up. That's good price growth. And one of the if you're in the hobby and you collect and you kind of have these memories you never forget, like these like instances or stories or just moments that no matter what happens in the hobby, you'll always remember. And one of those for me, like, had to do with this card where I was trying to collect all the cards, and I knew Skyridge had reverse hollows for the crystals. And I was like, man, I really want to get a reverse hollow of this Lugia because it's so cool. And so for like a while, I was always looking for reverse hollow Lugia crystals, and I couldn't find them. And I was like, this has got to be the hardest card to find. Like, where is it out there? And then, lo and behold, you find out it doesn't
Doesn't
exist. And you're,
exist.
yeah, yeah. And so it's like one of those special moments in the hobby I'll never forget because it was so frustrating to not be able to find that card.
Yeah, so
But
11,000, especially a January auction, mid-January auction, very strong. Strong price. PSA 10 pop of 132. Let's just touch
yeah,
on the history of the Neo Genesis, like your opinion on the history of the Neo Genesis Lugia.
yeah. I mean, Neo Genesis. Like one of the first times I saw it at auction, it was like $300, and I was like, "Oh, I've already got a copy. I don't need one." It's like, "Oh, I should have bought that other copy." You always think it's a cool card, and it's one of the bigger cards. Neo 2, and so you think the Charizard is the big one. For base, and it's got the 200K sale, and especially when the 130 Lugia came up, you think, well, what's the Charizard of the second gen? Well, it's either the T17 or it's got to be the Lugia. It's really one of the two. There's not really any other options. And the T17 already has a pretty strong foothold in the 30 to 50 range. But the Lugia is kind of like the legendary. It's kind of the beast. It kind of flies. It almost looks like a dragon. It has a lot of similarities. And it also had a movie around it. It also had the first movie. A lot of people went to theater. A lot of people can relate to it. So there's a lot of factors that make the Lugia seem like it could have a really, really strong sale. And so seeing the 130, it's pretty painful to see it come down to the 20s. And to me, that still feels really low. I get that, Charizard's got the base, the Shadowless, it's got the Crystal Zard that's selling for the 20, it's got, Blaine Zard, Dark Zard. There's a lot of other Zards that sell well. But Lugia really only has Crystal Lugia and the first Gym Lugia. And it just, like the 22 to me feels like a lot of value. If you had $500,000 to play with and you like set cards and you're not one of these trophy, just I don't want to say a word because I will regret it. But it feels like Lugia at 22 is a pretty good value play. Like with the T17 being 40 to 50, like I just feel like Lugia should be around there, if not more. That's just the looking at all, looking at everything.
I know in my head that it shouldn't be more than it shouldn't be more in the T17. But the T17 has never reached that height of six figures, to my knowledge, anyways. I think T17 sits around like 50 to 75 range. So it's never. I don't see ever hitting six figures. Just because there's just so many PSA 9 options. Like the differential between a PSA 9 T17 and a PSA 10 one is just massive. It's like $1,500 to whatever someone wants to pay for a 10. So I feel like 20 is just like, yeah, that makes sense to me, but at the same time I can't get past that this card used to be over 100 grand, right? So it's just I it's just one of those things. Like I'm gonna plead like I don't know. Like I feel like I don't know anything about this hobby. Just it's a weird spot. I've seen Neo Genesis cards, some of the more difficult to grade 1 to kind of 10 in. Your Slow Kings, your Heracrosses, those sit between the $8,000 to $10,000 mark, depending. And actually, I think I saw Heracross last year finish around a lot lower than I thought it was going to finish off at like 5,000 or something like that. Which, if you take which is boggles my mind, because if I compare it to like a Mario Pika that I sold last year for 5,000, I would place much more heavy value on the Heracross than the Mario Pika if I had $5,000 in hand. So that's either telling me that the Heracross is not valued enough, or the Mario Pika is valued too high. But at the same time, it's like something's like those Chinese buyers, man, they're sustaining those prices of that Mario Pika. You can't get one lower than $4,000. You literally cannot buy a Mario Pika for less than $4,000. So we've talked about like ad nauseum of just like maybe Japanese promos long run are the safe play. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't have an answer.
The question I always ask myself to temper myself is literally like, okay, you bought this card at 4K for Mario Pika. What are the chances it goes to 8K or 10K or 20K? Is that likely or not likely? Because when I see that card 4K, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to 10K, because if it goes to 10K, there's a lot of copies that also got to go to 10K. Whereas at Heracross, there's not that many copies. If they were equal populations, I would rather have the Mario Pika all day. But there's only 5 copies of Heracross, or 10 or 15. It's like doesn't take that much more to move the needle. And so you don't need 1,000 people loving Mario Pika. You just need like 10 people that love Heracross. So it's a
Mhm.
different like dynamic.
One of those cards that I unfortunately gave up on, and I just bought the 9.
Oh no.
I bought the 9 of it. I'm happy with it. I wasn't gonna when I was trying to get back and completing Neo Genesis. That was like we're talking
Mhm.
all about like peak levels Pokemon here. When like legendary dogs were like 10 grand each. It's just
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna jump into that market, but I probably I could have done the 5,000. At that point, I was just kind of like
Mhm.
at this point, yeah. Anyways, let's move on to some other cards. Another Charizard, Cardass. What's how do you pronounce it? Cardass or Cardis?
Oh man, I now you got me thinking about it. I just say card ass.
Yeah.
Like I just say it. You know what I mean?
You
I'm
just
sure.
yeah, I don't lengthen the ass section of it just to get the little giggles in. So we had a Cardass Charizard. Is it? Do you consider this a card?
It's one of those very interesting things because when you turn it over, there is like actual like text and details, this and that. Whereas like Topps Chrome and stuff like doesn't necessarily have like an attack and like different things. And so it's one of those really weird places where like a lot of people that collect some different things. I say, is it TCG? Is it a trading card game? Is there a game associated with it? And so like I like to put that qualifier on just to almost kind of protect like the Watsy love and all this other stuff. But there's a lot of major fans of these cards. Red and green, really the two sets. So I've been pretty impressed at how they're performing. Again, it's one of those things that in 2015 you go on eBay and you buy a whole set for $100, and you could buy as many as you wanted. Now, not the hollows, of course, but it's something that just people didn't necessarily have it tied to as a kid. They didn't really collect as a kid. And a lot of people that come in nostalgia for things they enjoy, it is what it is. I mean, the Michael Jordan like true rookie like doesn't sell for as much as the rookie that a lot of people recognize. And so the first at base card, the first at base cards, people recognize as kind of like the first of an era, and that's what really prices the top of the peak. But the card ass, Bandai stuff came before. And so I think it's been proven through a lot of research and this and that. But does that mean it's ever going to be the top of the top? It's kind of for everyone else to decide. But to me, I just don't have that relation to it. I just don't feel the nostalgia with it. If I'm paying like over 10K for a Charizard or one of these, like I'd rather have like a PSA 8 Zard. Just it's kind of more iconic, relatable. But yeah, so
This card just kind of emphasizes like how lazy PSA is, because the population of this card is 92. But that's green and red combined population.
Mhm.
They don't differentiate between the labels. I'm just like, just kind of like, man, can you not get like a qualifier? Like, just change the label. It's obviously a different card. It's literally a different color. Someone has to fight. Someone has to go out there and fight for differential like labels for these cards. You got to get Gary in there and say, listen, we had this fight already. We had this conversation between shadowless and non-shadowless. We
Yeah.
need to have this conversation of why this card needs to be labeled red and this one needs to be labeled green. But 14.4 is I think it's a pretty solid price for that card.
Yeah. But then you got to sit in and get relabeled. You got to pay to send it in. So
Uh,
another one of those little things. So a lot of these have been graded by CGC as well. So I would say most of what is hitting the market has been graded by CGC from this set.
Talk about Full Art Trainer. That's super expensive. That's not a waifu. And that is the 50,000 sale of the Masked Royal, or Royal. Yeah, it's. I am in perfect tune with my sexuality. But it's like the card is just it makes me feel uncomfortable. It's just like looking at it, it makes it's not my favorite card in the world. It doesn't like scream at you that it's like super rare. But
Mm-hmm.
it is a rare card.
I mean, put a Pokemon in there with the same hat, and it's like way cooler. No, I mean this is a very strong sale for this card. I know the owner. He's a friend of mine, and I knew that he was aware that seeing it to auction, you could get an interesting result. And, we both sent cards to auctions and got, results that performed below. And so I think 30K was kind of like the minimum here, just with the amount of people involved. I think there's a lot of interest around that price point. Once you get sort of that 50K price point, you really need two bidders. You really need multiple people to drive that up. And so I think that there are multiple people that wanted this in their collection that don't have it. And I would argue that if you were to auction another copy, it would probably get within 10% of that card. I don't think it would beat 50K, but I think it would get pretty close to it, simply because I think there's people that really want it, and I think there's a very strong sort of support at the 30K mark. So 50 was a little surprising, I think, for everyone. But it goes to show, you put some at auction, you say, hey, give us your best price, and you tell us live. And sometimes people will just kind of surprise you.
I feel like that's also like just in that vein. I feel like that's a realist. Not, I would say this card's realistic, but like in a binder, I think like if I were to like really be in the hobby, I'd try to do like a full art trainer binder, because I think that just like looks super cool. Just to look at. It's nice that there aren't a whole lot of full art trainer cards out there, so I think it's realistic if you say that you'll accept one waifu, you won't accept the Battle Day Lily one, but there's other versions of that card with kind of like that same type of artwork. But yeah, the Battle Day Lily, she's she had an up and down road that we talked about in the podcast that we recorded, but we don't need to get into that right now.
Some other interesting hobby news, since we are NextGen TCG, and we try to cover a few other different things, is the fall of MetaZoo. Kind of can't believe. I think a lot of people probably can believe that MetaZoo's finally shut its doors and come to a close.
I believe it because their big investment was Hello Kitty. We dedicated a whole section to a podcast talking about MetaZoo and Hello Kitty, and I like, to my chagrin, and now it's just dead. Now it's just dead.
It's gone. Bye. So yeah, I mean, without getting into all the different details, I think a lot of people know MetaZoo kind of came out with a bang. There was a lot of collectors. A lot of people were really bullish. The Kickstarter boxes were kind of hoarding this and that. And then they had a lot of different promos that were really collector focused. A lot of people loved that stuff. And then as the set sort of went on, you had some management issues I think everyone's sort of aware of. And then there was a big artist walkout where about 8 artists, walked out of the company, which was probably, I'd say, maybe 3/4 of the artists or so a couple of months ago. And then now we've come to the point where December 31st, they had a letter that basically said how they're going to fix the game, this and that. They cut off really all communications, staff channels, chat channels, like all that. And then as of January 29th, they have said we are shutting the door. And there were some talks of a buyout going on where maybe someone else will take control and fund it and this and that. And maybe this is the first step for a buyout. And so maybe, going bankrupt or shutting the doors or what have you is step one. Mike did mention in one of his podcasts that, this is kind of the end for MetaZoo Games, but the IP may live on in some other way. So, who knows what that could mean. But all I know is that eBay has blown up with MetaZoo. So I know a lot of people are not willing to ride this out. They're trying to get whatever they can because most dead TCGs are worthless.
How much did you invest in MetaZoo, Zach?
So I'll tell you, but my tie to MetaZoo is when I opened it and played with it, I felt like a kid again. To me, it felt like Pokemon when I didn't know any Pokemon. I felt like I was in 1999 opening Pokemon packs where I didn't know what Jolteon was. I didn't know what Vaporeon was. And it was just fun. I don't know much about MetaZoo. Like when I open it up, like the cards, they feel nice. And you go through and they have different artworks. There's a lot of American lore, sort of mixed in there, which I thought was really cool. Like Paul Bunyan and Grim Reaper and all these things. And so like I genuinely enjoyed it. Now, I never made plays that were like, hey, invest long-term, this, that. But, I owned a red ink at one point. I sold it for like 10 or 11K. Pretty awesome time to sell that, looking at things now. But, I'd probably have some sort of mid 5 figures into it, maybe 6 figures, but probably just mid 5 figures. And I'm sure with this news, all that is probably worth about a quarter of it now. But most of what I own from MetaZoo, I never really intended to sell. So I think I have some stuff up on eBay, but it was always at prices that were like 4x, like anything reasonable. So, yeah, I'll probably keep what I have, and then we'll look at it in 20 years and think, oh wow, remember that card game that lasted 10 sets or 8 sets? So yeah.
Let's tie this back to the hobby that we are involved in, the Pokemon hobby. Let's
Mhm.
just say, for some reason, I don't see it happening in the foreseeable future. Pokemon, because you brought up any dead TCG is worthless. Like, let's
Mhm.
just say the Pokemon TCG dies.
Mhm.
How does that affect the market?
I'm being facetious when I say that. So not all dead CCs are worthless, but there's a lot of card games you can $2 for 36 pack booster box. But I think if Pokemon goes to zero, one of the biggest differences it has against a lot of other card games is the amount of cards printed, billions and billions of cards, to the point where like you cannot maintain it. Like you could have 10 big players in MetaZoo maintain the prices because there's some cards only have 100 copies. There's some cards that don't have that much. Well, Pokemon, there's so many first ed base Zards. There's so many like of everything that like even if you had like a horde of people that just wanted to maintain stuff, you can't. It's like the stock market. There's no one player that can have long term influence on something across like the whole market of things. So what I'm getting to is that if Pokemon went to zero, this and that, fears motivates people way more than greed. It would slowly crash down to next to nothing. So first ed base, and this is saying it all just is hellfire and it's horrible and no one wants it, this and that. Like the 10,000 people couldn't keep some of the cards above $1,000. There's just too many cards. There's too many options. You literally need the whole world to help support the card market.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if that's too extreme, or
Pokemon's gonna live forever, Zach. Tell the people, we gotta maintain a healthy market here. Okay, Pokemon's gonna live forever.
It'll live forever. But if you're giving me the scenario of like they shut the doors and it's worthless and people don't want it, and then you have all this fear, like you're gonna have all these people who are teetering on the side that just literally like, well, I'm out. And so you only have like the pure players, like the pure lovers, like this, that. But the key is there's just so many of them. It's just you're not going to support the $1,000 cards, at that rate. You're everything's just going to reprice like 10% of what is today.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time to do that.
Yeah, it certainly will. So,
okay,
what
will scare you?
R.I.P. MetaZoo.
Sorry, it's gone. Hello, no, it's gone.
Okay. All right. So now that we are in 2024, I think it's time. We'll take a quick reflection of all the major stuff that happened in 2023. Kind of like put a bow on it. We're not going to go too in depth because the majority of these topics we've talked about before. And so if you want more in-depth conversations, you can find them in the playlist. So probably I'd say there's two main things that come to mind when I think about 2023. The first being PWCC being purchased by Fanatics because they were bad with their business policies and failed their loan programs. So this is something I know you have information on. Let's give the people the information, Zach.
Oh man, I was.
Oh man.
I was scared more than I have ever been scared on some things because I had a lot of cards with them, and I did not like that at all. So I withdrew everything, and then now I've kind of got some stuff back there now. But it was one of those things I was like, oh, like don't go. You don't want to go down with the ship, man. You want to hop on the first lifeboat. So
and Fanatics was the lifeboat.
Yeah.
like if Fanatics didn't step up and end up purchasing PWCC, it would have been a bad time for that company. Definitely would have probably filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that there would have been a path, out. There would have been some way to figure it out. But the hobby was struggling, the economy was struggling. I mean, there were a lot of layoffs for corporations that started around that time. Being in a lot of debt, being underwater is not a good thing, especially when there's a lot of assets around, even though they don't technically own it. But yeah, it just that was rough, and they had such a good business model. I mean, the thing is, like people forget, PWCC has been the market pioneer on a lot of things, like the vault program, like a lot of the loan programs, like this and that. Like maybe they weren't the first every time, but they ran a lot of them at scale, and so like PWCC had every chance to just really be the number one player, probably outside of eBay. And I think that they just, a few just mismanagement items, just kind of basically cost them selling the company.
That's all you're gonna give me. That's all you're gonna
That's
give me. That's it.
okay. Well, so one of the best parts about being in the hobby, being in tune with the hobby is talking to a lot of different people and being very in tune with like what's happening, like what's going on here, what's going on there, just to make smarter, more sound decisions. And out of respect for some of those relationships, you literally just like and I know all these people at all the different places. Like you don't want to throw anyone under the bus, or you don't want to like you want to respect that stuff because well, PWCC had all the trouble, and they figured it out. And they're steamrolling ahead, and it seems like the weekly auctions and all the premier auctions are still going good. And the fine card is still making weekly posts on them, so I think it's a good thing for the hobby. I will say myself, I'm not checking as often as I used to, but I'm getting more in a habit of going through all the listings and checking and this and that. And you really haven't seen much of a change. I think for Pokemon, we noticed something quick because they did shuffle a lot of staff, but they're kind of getting back to where they were. And as long as they have good inventory and things are flowing through, I think people are going to look at them. And as long as people have goals to complete and collections to fill, I mean, I think they're going to be there. I'm just curious if they're ever going to rebrand to Fanatics or if they're going to change up. So we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. Second major story in my top 3 of 2023 is the CGC label change and the change of the new grading standards.
That feels like 10 years ago, man. That was
no, that happened in 2023. So I kind of want to put a bow on like now that we have like we ended the year, or your thought process of it now, and then we have like PSA 10 prices eclipsing PSA 10 prices, like eclipsing pristine 10 prices, which theoretically shouldn't make any sense because a pristine 10 is more of a perfect card than a PSA 10 card. It kind of comes into the idea of like brand power and just like what are people familiar with, and like was CGC kind of just like being pumped just because of the backlog of PSA 10, but and like the true hearts of like Pokemon collectors is like PSA just kind of like where you want to be at. There's like 20 questions there, so answer them best as you can.
Oh my gosh! I mean that I think I went from the side, and I thought we did a really good job like explaining. If you go back and watch the episode, it was the only special episode we did of kind of explaining why it makes sense. And I get why a lot of people are frustrated, but just the highlight of it is when you make the change, you have to change the label. You can't just change the grading scale. You have to change the label so people clearly know there's pre-label change blue, and then there's post black. And so like a black 10's the same as like a blue 9.5 really. But it's interesting when it comes back to the marketing data. It's like people want to see 10s. It's like CDC is still kind of doing a lot of things the same way. It's just they're calling it a 10, and they got rid of the perfect, which I wasn't a big fan of. Getting rid of the subgrades is actually making more sense like 6-7 months out than it was like back then. But at the same time, like there were a lot of people who probably lost money, on this because just of how it was sort of rolled out. It's impossible to kind of have a perfect way. Maybe you announce it 3 months before it happens, so the market can really adjust. But the people that made the most money were ones that sold the day of the announcement, not the people who waited to get it recased and then sold. It was if you sold day one, you did pretty well.
Yeah, I feel like long-term projection. I don't know. I just CGC just with Pokemon especially, it doesn't sit well. I've held a CGC card. I see it. It's just I don't know. I just have so many PSA cards. I don't even look for CGC Pokemon cards. Like if I'm on eBay, I don't even look. I just look. I want my PSA 10. That's what I'm used to. That's what I'm comfortable with. And I just been conditioned over a course of a decade just to only buy PSA cards. But the fact that like PSA 10 cards are like being sold for more than pristine cards. Just kind of like I said earlier, kind of just shows you the power of the brand and just people supporting what they're used to, because it doesn't make any sense if you look at it from a clearly objective point of view.
Yeah, power of the brand, baby.
Hmm.
I think a couple of the other things for 2023, just to throw them out, you had the Snap Pika finally emerging. I think that was huge, especially for a lot of fans of the hobby history and research. There was a lot of the signing craze, so people that got signed cards. It started off in February of Harada, down in Orlando, and every time you went to the line, you got 5. And now we're at the point where Harada's making a bunch of Facebook posts about hating signing and selling and this and that, and Pokemon's so tight on everything. You can barely get anything signed. Even at Worlds, Ishihara doesn't sign cards anymore. He just signs posters that they hand you and make you empty your pockets before you even go up there. So the signing craze was definitely something that changed quite a bit in 2023.
Just to finish off my top 3, the last one, I really struggled with this because it just felt like it was something that was very significant, and then compared to something that was just kind of like being like pumped in our faces. So I was either between the waifu hype of the rise and fall of waifus, but I eventually settled on the emergence of just like all the extra copies of high-end cards. We're talking high-end illustrators, trophy cards that's supposed to have trainers' names on it that don't. So they're very obviously duplicate cards, and then you're kind of going into it knowing that you're buying a duplicate card because the card is actually different. It doesn't have the trainer's name on it of the winner. So yeah, especially when you talk about the state of what the illustrator was at in terms of like, man, we saw a lot of illustrators in 2023, man, and it just seemed like it was almost like an endless supply. Like, just needless to say, if you didn't get, like, if you wanted it, if you were in the market for an illustrator and you didn't get one in 2023, you were really never in the market for an illustrator, because you get so many opportunities to pick one up. And like, I think like what was the cheapest one was sold for? It was like it was an altered.
160.
Yeah, it was an altered copy, right? It was an altered copy for 160. So yeah, if you were so-called in the market for Illustrator and you didn't pick one up, I think the end of 2023 was your opportunity to pick one up.
I think more illustrators are going to come to market. It seems that as long as the cards are printed at the same time, like if all the illustrators are printed at the same time, like I'm cool with it. But if it ever comes out that like an illustrator was printed in 2023, that would be very scary, especially if it ended up in a case of one of the major companies. So I have no information or even any hints or anything like that. I'm just speculating that like that would be scary. But everything yeah, go ahead.
We gotta bust out that carbon dating.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think it's gonna happen? You think we're gonna see like a high-end card that's just been reprinted or just like extremely well forged?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already happened. I think there's already like big cards and first ed Zards and unlimited Zards, and I think there's a lot of things that have been sort of recreated in like ways that are very difficult to tell. But if you you study the hobby and this and that, you can sometimes pick them out. And a lot of times the grading companies have techniques and stuff they use to pick them out. So a lot of these are pretty close to the naked eye. It's hard to tell. So it's scary, man. But it's always gonna be a risk until it's a risk you cannot take out.
That's what you're paying for, that surcharge for those premium grades for those premium cards, right?
Oh yeah. If only they're all financially guaranteed. That'd be one.
All right. Put a bow on 2023. Let's talk about 2024. We're moving forward, Zach. We're moving forward in life, looking into the future. I know we're a little bit late about this with New Year's resolutions videos and our goals for 2024. What are your collecting goals for 2024? What I know you're still in the hobby full time. Because you're literally working in the hobby on a daily basis. So it's just interesting to kind of get your point of view as a person who's working in the hobby as well as trying to be a collector as well. Probably you are much more relatable than I am because I'm just kind of like a washed up collector. So what are your collecting goals for 2024?
Oh man, I feel like with Valentine's Day being soon, you're always looking for love. You're looking for a hot date for the collection. You're looking for something to spice up the collecting goals with. The hardest part of being in the hobby and also being a collector is passing on things that you normally collect, just because you see so many more cards. There's so many more deals. There's so many more things that come in front of you. It's like, okay, clearly this is a business, decision, not a collection decision, which is kind of a shift in mindset. I would love. I mean, there's a couple of things I'd love to build out. I'd love to. I love auto cards, that pop up, especially some of the early ones that aren't like they don't have like a two or a date or something like that. I think that's so cool. I'd like to upgrade my no rarity set a little bit. I've got some, gaps that could be tens and some upgrades here and there. I think I'm missing some of the hollows. There's a lot of error cards that always come. I feel like almost every show or every event or something, someone always has an error card that they've set aside for me or something. I've got a couple of different pieces of artwork at different shows, and I look at my walls, and I don't have that much wall space left, and I love picking up like cool different things here and there. But I think it'd be cool to also invest in the hobby in some way that's outside of like cardboard, whether that's there's a lot of different things you can do. And so I haven't like picked out the perfect thing yet, but and maybe it's not perfect, but I'd like to do something in the hobby where it's not just buying a card, it's buying into something. So that's something I want to, it's like an active goal I want to have by the end of 2024.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
What about you?
So I'm not done with the questions yet.
Oh
We're
no.
diving in. You need
Oh
to set.
no.
So I used to be a personal trainer. If you guys didn't know, so the whole point of the first thing that you do when you have a client is you need to set realistic, smart goals. Goals that are
Hmm.
realistic to meet. So if you were to dial in like one thing that you want to do, I know that it's hard to like share that because you don't want people you obviously don't want people knowing what your one thing is. You just kind of get like be broad a little bit because you don't want to spike up that market. Like what's that one thing that you want to do?
I think a massive goal that I would love to achieve is to finish the Cora Cora PSA 10 set. It's 39 cards. I have 36 39 PSA 10. The three cards I'm missing, two of which are probably five-figure cards. One is probably a four-figure card. And I know that the one card I'm missing, Pikachu November 1996, Cora Cora Glossy, that card would have immense competition. I think you could bid double the market value, and you'd still probably get outbid just because so many people want that card. But that would be a very specific, measurable, smart goal to achieve. So in the next section, we're going to go to Collector's Corner, which is where Tetra and myself will pull a card from our collection that has some sort of meaning or significance or some sort of story that we want to share. And up to this point, I think I've shared mostly graded cards, if not some raw. All either a cornerstone of the collection or mostly error cards. Unfortunately for you this week, Tetra, I don't have an error card.
Oh,
Um,
I'm so disappointed. I'm
mhm.
so disappointed.
But I do have an alternative card that is not PSA graded. The street value isn't worth that much, but to me it's priceless. And at a recent event, I went to Germany and Cologne, and Legal TCG was there by Fuji, this and that. And I walked and I met some collectors, spent a lot of time with them. One of them was a Metapod collector. Loved Metapod dearly. I
What?
know, I know. Now you've seen it all. Now you've seen it all. Bit of the 151, like least likely Pokemon.
Harden! You are the stronger Metapod!
I know.
Harden!
Never loses a battle. He's good at hardening. It's crazy. I met Matt Stoney a couple weeks before that. He's a huge Oddish collector, which is another Pokemon you would be like an Oddish, and meeting a Metapod. I mean, that was one step further. So the card of the week, without further ado, is it's a card he signed, and it just says to Zach, and he signed it, dated it. It's a Metapod, and this card is probably a penny raw, but because he signed it, because we spent a lot of the weekend together, just doing different things together. Getting this card to the end is just so meaningful. And the reason I want to show this card, as far as card of the week, is if you don't have a card signed by someone you like in the hobby, like a friend or a collector or someone else, like everyone, when you go to an event, get a card signed by someone that you really enjoy or appreciate. And throw it in the binder. You could have a little binder of these. You could have one or two of these. It's one of the best memories you can make. And we did the full official signing way. We had the 2 and the date, so it is Pokemon legit when it comes to this autograph.
So the thing is, what Zach is telling you is that he doesn't really like me because he actually has never. I literally met Zach in person, and he never requested a card from me to be signed. So well, explain
Yeah.
yourself.
But I got a cool magnet. I like buying fridge magnets, and we went to Niagara Falls, and we did a little trip together, and it was fun, and we did everything but go to a hockey game.
This guy, make sure if you meet someone, get a card signed. I'm just sitting here, I'm like, this guy never asked for a card for me to get signed. I'm just like, oh, okay, I see how it is. Okay.
Tetra bought my mom maple syrup. I mean, it was so nice. The problem is Tetra only has his collection. He doesn't have any other cards, so
yeah,
there's just not a bunch of cards.
That is so untrue. That it is sickening. Anyways,
you don't have a card laying around I can sign for you.
Yeah. Anyways, so my card, quiz time, Zach. I'm like, so I actually gave Zach a quiz when we met in person. Like, what was talking about 2023? What was the we wanted to do the top 3. I asked him the top 3 species sold at auction or on the secondary marketplace in 2023, and he actually didn't get it. He didn't get it. PFM got it. Zach didn't get it. So number 1, Zach, let's round off. What was the number 1 Pokemon sold in 2023?
Charizard.
2?
Pikachu.
And number 3?
Oh, it's dark out. It's Umbreon.
Umbreon. So those are your top 3 species of 2023. So if you can also file that away as a nugget as well in terms of like if you're thinking of stuff to invest in. Species collecting is a very real thing. So take that account in your investment ideas. But anyways, second quiz time, Zach. What was the first ever shiny Pokemon featured in the TCG?
Mew. Shiny Mew.
Mew. You got it. So today we
got
the Korokora. Oh, there it is. The Korokora Mew. Beautiful. I love how whimsical this card is. And they actually it's actually the correct color. It's actually the correct shiny color because at the beginning of the shiny phase, Pokemon didn't really flush out all their ideas, which is why you have like Gold Star Mudkip that's not really shiny. it's still blue instead of pink. A little bit of variance on the shining cards from Neo as well. The Mewtwo is definitely not the right color. The Charizard is not the right color, but that's okay. We'll forgive Pokemon for not fully flushing out the shining Pokemon idea when they first tried to introduce it.
I like this different Hawful pattern. The Mew's cool because it's Japanese. It's super, like, the Hawful on that is just beautiful. If you've never seen a Korokor Mew in person, like if you go to a show, like just ask someone to look at it, like take it out of the display, like hold it. Like, it is a gorgeous card. And then it's like even like the Japanese shining, like Gyarados is like amazing. English, like the texture on the Charizard is like a little different. I like that it was different. I get that the colors were a little off, but it was cool that they kind of they didn't mix it up a little bit.
I would say it's one. I feel like this card you should try if you're a collector in this hobby. It's kind of like the Ancient Mew card, like obviously more expensive, a little bit more expensive than Ancient Mew. I almost classify it as almost like a foundation card. Like almost like every collector should own one of these cards, like whatever grade that you want. Even for a binder, you can get like a PSA 2 or 3 like card of this. It just looks fantastic in a binder. So I would classify the Korokoro Shining Mew as kind of like a foundation card in this hobby.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because price is really high. I think a lot of people may argue like it's a good price or whatever, but it came in Korokora. It's in a magazine. There's a ton out there. I remember like you could buy as many as you wanted, for like a decent price. It was still like 25, $50. And there were a ton of them. But it's just one of those things. It's like, it's so cool. It's a shining card. Like the Japanese shinies are so hard to get, like compared to the Core where you got it in a magazine. But it's still one of those cards, like still thousands of dollars in a 10. It's still really strong. Even the lower grades, it still prices really well. So I think it's one of those cards, like if you looked at the PSA Pop report, it might feel like a modern card almost, like when you look at some of the numbers, just because there were so many printed. But like that's a card like I could totally justify like having a high price for the quantity. And it even could be like underpriced, especially the lower grades. I think the lower grades probably are could be higher.
All right. Final segment of the podcast. Ask Nick and Zach your viewer questions. So these viewer questions are from like 2 months ago.
From last year, man.
From last year, we pulled questions out of our last video, as well as you can also slide into our DMs at NextGen_TCG on Instagram. So our first question comes from David Lee 1. I've noticed that I'm getting more and more frantic trying to buy expensive cards and comparing my collections to others. Do either of you have any experience comparing collections, and how to resolve that conflict? So David's asking basically, like, are you one of those people when someone gets something really cool, or do you get jealous about it? Or if you feel like you missed out on something and someone else gets it on something that you've been chasing for a while, you get a little bit upset about it, a little bit of FOMO. That our good friend Nicer is like a prime example of someone who suffers from extreme FOMO. Yeah, Zach, you're more touched with collectors than I am, other collectors. I generally don't talk to a lot of people anymore. And you probably have, since you have basically been at the forefront of WotC collecting and completing sets, you probably competed with a lot of other people for things as well, especially with air cards. You can probably shed some insight into this.
Oh man, you're too kind, Tetra. Appreciate the kind words. I think FOMO is definitely something I've experienced. I think it's something a lot of people experience. It's something that it's hard to suppress. It's almost like a natural, thing. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna miss this that you got to chase. But I feel like the older I get, the more like immature I feel like FOMO is. I feel like it's almost something that it's like you're chasing something not because you want it, you're chasing it because other people want it, and it's such an interesting dynamic. And David Lee, what I would challenge you to do is try to get to the point where when you see somebody get something cool, try to get to the point where your first reaction is to be happy for them and like think like, wow, I'm so ecstatic that Dan got that for his collection, or Rusty got that for his collection, or David got another trophy card. Like that's awesome. Like I knew it was gonna be tough. Like it'd be great if he could get that. And so when you get to that point, you really can kind of separate yourself from the FOMO and make smart decisions. Like when the hobby and the hype's going up, we say sell into the hype. A lot of that's just FOMO. That's all it is. It's just people chasing that piece. And once you get content and happy, and you're looking out for other people, other people look out for you, and you'll find that you're able to complete your collection probably at a better price than what you could find on the public market, because someone's like, like I just do a friend price or this or that, or, they're like, oh, I know he really likes Ampharos. And so, I'm not saying that I never experienced the same feelings you are, because I've had those for years, especially trying to complete sets. And it's hard to complete a set when cards are pop 1 or pop 2, or a lot of times I had people say, oh, this card's only pop 19 or pop 40. And I'm like, it's a lot of copies, man. You got a lot of options. Like you don't have FOMO. You got 40 copies you can get. Like you got a lot of people who could sell you that card, man. And so it's just, just get to the point where you can be happy instead of jealous.
Zach, unless you're dealing with Zach never gives a friend price.
No, I got the best prices anyone ever got. Okay, Japanese base holos, $40 a card. You tell me that's not.
I'm just needling you.
That's a friend of a friend. Mom to mom. Like that's the price. Yeah. And every deal we did, I was like, man, I cannot. This is rough. Oh man.
If I ever wanted to trigger Zach, I know exactly how to do it.
Remind me of the prices I sold you cards because they were below the friend price.
All right.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Next question
Hmm.
comes from Mark Ugel. Are we in the vintage collectors market, or do you think we're gonna go further down?
I mean, this time of year we're going further down just because it's January, February, March. Like, you're gonna dip. Does that mean the whole market's going down? I don't know. You just kind of have a little dip, maybe come back up. I think prices are really strong, especially in the high end. And if the high end keeps going up, it's going to pull everything else up. I know we keep talking about eights and nines being low, but I think it's a great time to buy vintage. Um, and until things find their permanent place in collections, until if a lot of the flippers and resellers and live streamers are moving the vintage, it's going to take time for a lot to settle out. It's going to take time for someone to complete WotC and then say, I'm going to get out of Pokemon for 5 years, but I'm going to keep the cards. It takes time for all those cards to remove themselves from the market. So um, I think it's always a good time to collect vintage. I don't think there's ever a perfect time.
Yeah, vintage is like everyone has a price, right? Everyone has a price that they're willing to shake loose a card out of their collection. Like if Charizard ever hits 1 million, probably will sell mine because that's $1 million. But until then, like I still have a job. I still have stable income. Like I don't have any large expenses coming out that I need to liquidate for. Like I at this point in time that I value the card more than the influx of cash that I would get from selling it, and I think that's basically we have to look at it. Like once these cards get into actual collectors' hands, the market just has to you just have to keep waiting. Eventually they don't hit the market anymore, and then that changes the price of things, especially when you're talking about some of the more difficult to grade WotC cards. Yeah, you just kind of wait. Like before COVID, legendary dogs were sitting at like 1,500 to 2,000, and then overnight when people realized that, I think it's probably an auction that like when people realized, man, this card hasn't shown up for auction in like years, just because people who own them are like, I don't really need $2,000 right now, and then someone eventually auctioned one is like, oh, 10 grand. Where the hell did 10 grand come from? What the heck is this? And then that kind of like goes back into the hype. So I think you just have to be like a little bit strategic depending on like how much money that you have. If you have less money, obviously you have to be more strategic uh, with how you're spending it. Your nines first edition, extremely good value. We saw like a PSA 9 Magneton sell for like sub $1,000, which is ridiculous when you consider how much a heavy pack sells for. Um, so yeah, like nines, tens, eights, even eights, some eights or what as well. Yeah, you just have to. It's just a matter of time. Eventually, like the supply will like slow down, just because they're in collectors' hands. And yeah. Anyways, that
Wow.
I think it ties into what Mr. Guitar Freak's question is: how much of the market being down do you think of is due to each of these three things? Time of year, overall interest in the hobby, economic conditions, and I will jump the gun and answer yes. Yes.
All
All
the
the
above.
above. All the above.
Yeah, time of year is going to have a factor on price, but it's not going to deviate too much, like 10 to 20% each way. Overall interest in the hobby is important, but people come and go, and you can always sort of summon people who've left the hobby to come back. And there's always people who are going to find love in the hobby, whether they're part of the new PAL piece. I think economic conditions is going to be the biggest piece. I'd say 60 to, I mean, I'd say 80% economic conditions. I'd probably say 15% interest in hobby, 5% time of year, mostly because like if crypto's doing well, Pokemon's doing well. Like that is a fact. That is you can look at the data. That is a fact. So economic condition is going to be the biggest part of
No,
it.
crypto stonking these days, man.
Just the
Crypto,
big
crypto's doing well right now.
Pokemon's doing well, baby. They want to cash out some of that fake gold for real gold.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. I don't even want to try to unpack that one. Wow.
Um, no, it's been good. It's gonna have a good start to 2024. We got a big year ahead of us. Like I said earlier, like the crazy part is we don't know what the big things are going to be. You know, the CDC changed their grading scale back to
No.
purple labels. I don't know.
That'd be
Uh,
corporate suicide. That's just
yeah.
would not happen.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you what. Big call out 2024. What I think is going to happen. I think one of the major grading companies will be acquired. I think, private equity is a 3 to 5 year time horizon. You look at how things are going. I think you're looking at, I don't know which one, this or that, but one of those guys is going to make a move.
BGS. I think it's BGS.
Um, I don't know. I think one of them. I think it's a really safe bet. I think it's like more than 50% likely that something, so most private equity isn't going to be too long. So who
My
knows?
my my opinion is based on just like like without any insider knowledge and basically no conversations with anyone else. I feel like PSA is doing fine. Like I just find like BGS is like in this very weird spot in the hobby
Hmm.
where it's catering basically strictly to sport people. And
Hmm.
you just don't hear like if you look at the numbers of like how many cards are actually being graded on a weekly basis, like BGS is like dead last. Not even close to the PSA. But I know you probably have your own ideas. I'm probably gonna end up wrong. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'd say like BGS has like this weird. Doesn't seem like it has like this foothold, um, or it
Hmm.
could have a larger foothold in the grading sphere. So I think major changes really only come up with like a corporate change up, takeover,
Hmm.
all the type of stuff like that. That's just pure speculation as an outside observer. But yeah, it'd be cool to see.
We'll see what happens. So
You
leave your 24 predictions in the comments, and
know,
we'll
we'll
answer your
talk.
questions.
Yeah, that's a good one. Leave your 2024 predictions in the comments, and if there's any good ones, we'll talk about it, and we'll talk
Uh,
about like how feasible they are. We'll have like a hypothetical podcast, just like stuff that
yeah.
we would like to see. That'd
If
be
you
fun,
make a
actually.
if you make a wild prediction and it comes true, I will send you something at the end of 2024 for like one, not for everyone, but for like one person. If you make a wild prediction and like at the end of this year we look back and like, dude, like that guy had it, and the comment's not edited, don't edit your comment. Like I'll send you something as like a as a congrats.
I'm gonna read them, so if you change it, I will know. All right. All right.
There you go.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up season 2, episode 1 of the Next Gen TCG podcast. Once again, a big apologies that we went on a little bit of a hiatus, but personal life and family always takes precedent over this hobby that we all enjoy loving. And Zach and I are back. We're back to talk Pokemon, talk shop with you guys, and hopefully you will join with us for the rest of 2024.
We're back, baby. Hope your mom's okay and your dog's okay, and we'll see you soon.